Hi, Bob Cusack with The Hill, back again with Mark Penn. A lot has happened, to say the least, since we last got together. Mark, you've got another batch of interesting polling, as we always do. What is the one word that really summarizes it?
I think the key word that summarizes this poll is renewal. I think there's no question that this represents, the changes that occurred represent a renewal of the prospects for the Democratic Party, a second chance, another at bat, an entirely new team. Uh,
Yes, yeah,
Something.
totally different, totally different. And your polling really does show that I think a lot of Democrats believe that there was obviously the Democratic Party was in disarray for a couple weeks as Biden was resisting efforts from Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama. But I think most Democrats think they made the right choice. And Harris's numbers, which in your last poll she was underwater by 14, 38 to 52, now 47 to 47, which is the same, basically even notch that Trump has. What do you make of that? Is this just a honeymoon that's going to fade?
Well, it's a honeymoon that could stick, but it's a honeymoon that might have a very hard ceiling right above it. And I know the whole thing is really quite anomalous. I mean, in many ways. I mean, Joe Biden, who was heralded as the greatest president since FDR, then found half the Democratic Party basically rallied by major elected officials against him. And so his numbers were cratering, not because the general electorate was changing. It's because Democrats themselves were attacking. So I think it was not unexpected that, number one, there was only one potential candidate in the Democratic system that could possibly come up here and be the candidate, and that was Harris and is Harris. And I think I'd been very clear about that. And and so as soon as she became the candidate, all that carping, the pro-Biden people gave in. They were not angry that Biden quit, as would have happened, let's say with Trump voters. If Trump was forced out, the Trump voters would abandon the party. That didn't happen because Harris is the vice president, and Biden gave her his full endorsement, and so the party got reunited, and so the Titanic has a new captain, and the iceberg that was hit there was really, causing the ship basically to be upended. And now they've patched it up, refloated the ship, and it's still, however, in fairly, if I may keep the metaphor going, in fairly icy waters.
And where are we now with the race? As you mentioned, Biden was slipping in battleground states and national polls. Most Democrats did want him and are happy that he stepped aside. Where's the race now?
Oh my God, overwhelming numbers of people are happy that he left. I mean, again, I have to savor the impact of the debate. We still haven't gotten to the bottom of whose loony idea it was, a presidential debate before someone had the nomination, and whether or not it was in fact meant to test Biden, and possibly get him out if he wasn't ready. That story has not been unearthed yet, regardless of what Seymour Hersh says he has found about Barack Obama. So these, about what we're really seeing here is the Democrats reconsolidated, complete enthusiasm lining up behind the Harris choice, and this really puzzling change in attitudes towards how they view her, because she only had a 38% favorable. She was slightly behind Biden. She hasn't done anything since that. And so, as remarkable as the debate was as an event that destroyed really Biden, by showing that the emperor has no clothes, in classic manner, The idea now that she is kind of deified by the press and suddenly is a great vice president is fascinating, really. Now, having said that, her favorable is, Trump has a pretty good favorable too. He's at 48. He's at 48. He's never been at 48. I think I think one of the questions we had is, was his reaction to the attempted assassination typical or something extraordinary? And most people thought it was something extraordinary. And I think that as a result, a lot of his personal attributes improved.
And so your poll has Harris down 3, so she's still the underdog, and that I think is right. But she has a path to victory. What do you think are going to be the keys now that we're now under 100 days to the election?
Yeah, so the clock has been reset to June 26th, in which all of that kind of post debate fall off has been erased. And remember, the reason that Biden, in theory, was doing the debate was because he was losing at the time, and
Right.
our poll has her losing in 3 to 4 points, which would be a significant loss. There are pretty clear reasons for that, which is most people are upset about the economy. The rating of the Biden Harris administration is 42% job approval, whereas 54% approve of the job that Trump did. And we do see that she has kind of pockets of renewed strength with Black voters, with young people, with women generally. So she has an opportunity to, I think, stir key targeted voters in ways that Biden seemed to be losing his grasp on. And so that's what gives her kind of an active, viable campaign, plus her funding. And plus the kind of media free ride that she's getting, and she can kind of use the Biden technique of not answering any tough questions for a couple of months, and she's got a convention coming up, so this is ideally timed, giving her kind of a free message ride, for several days, which again, the advantage is that it's pushed so late, right before people start to vote.
Yeah, and there are, as you mentioned, there's good news for Democrats. As you mentioned, Biden kind of lost the media, he lost Hollywood, and then the writing was on the wall that this huge development would take place where he steps aside. However, as you mentioned, there's some bad news in here for the Harris campaign. The economic numbers, we've been talking about this well over a year. They're still flat. They're not good. And the top issues are inflation and immigration. Policy-wise, this comes down to policies based upon your polling. Republicans win, right?
Well, the elections are about what people get in their head that they're about. So if this election is about performance and policy, people think Trump performed. And when you look at the Biden policies, people are mostly against them. I put a question in: do you favor or oppose open borders? And actually, I'm surprised about a 32% favored open borders, which is more than I thought, but 68% opposed. And I said, well, do you think Harris is for open borders? And almost, I think 70% said, yeah, she's for open borders. So when we look at that as a former political consultant, I would say, wow, that means people know the answer to the question, but they're not connecting the answers to the issue questions to how they're voting. Because otherwise,
right,
Trump would be at 72. Because on the most important issue, so who's going to raise or lower taxes, who's going to close or leave the borders open, who's going to crack down or not on crime, obviously she has some advantages on abortion as an issue, though the Republicans have moved to try to undercut that. But nevertheless, I think they're there. And obviously there's a Democratic talking point campaign to make J.D. Vance seem weird, whatever that means.
right.
we don't get that he's the greatest VP choice, nor that he's a particular deficit either. At least as of now, though it's a pretty concerted messaging campaign. I haven't actually, and I think they've got him on the kind of cat lady quote from 3 years ago
Right.
that they obviously had planned, but they got to, in terms of a message machine, they were able to deliver some comment that somebody made 3 years ago as though it happened yesterday, very effectively. And I think it shows you that there is a very favorable Democratic message machine that has a lot of power to it. So there's a lot of ways this race can go. However, if it is on policy and performance, things that Trump has a lot of trouble keeping his focus on, then that's really where there are very clear, double-digit advantages here for the Republicans.
And on those points, it is remarkable. I think some of those numbers, that 56% of Democrats think that Harris is for open borders. But as you mentioned, a decent amount of the electorate, especially on the left, likes open borders. So that plays into that number. Another good thing for Harris is that she's got a 10-point lead over Trump on the right temperament. This is something that obviously Trump is Trump, and people think he's going to change. Whether it's an assassination attempt, Trump is Trump. But do you think that there's a dispute in the Republican Party about whether Republicans, how they should attack Harris? Should they go after her as a DEI hire? Should they go after her cackle, which Trump just mocked? And then others are just saying, listen, guys, let's talk about immigration, the economy, Trump's record, because your polling shows that most think he did a good job as president, majority. So where do you think Trump has to watch himself? Because, before, as he throttled Biden in the debate, Biden was just not good by himself, and Trump wisely just let him speak. This is a whole new dynamic, and we don't know if we're going to have debates. Hopefully we will. But Trump's got to be careful now, right?
Well, it's a campaign, right? And it's a unique situation in which the nominee did not go through the primary, but had an unfavorable rating before being nominated, and then gets dropped in, and then you've got to reorient everything that you're doing now to basically win a second presidential race. In effect, Trump won the first presidential race, and they sort of carried off the carcass of the first candidate. And so now he gets to do it all again, right? And how is he going to do that, right? How is he going to do that? Well, I think he's best running against a California progressive. He shouldn't really be running against Biden. He should be running against Newsom in not a literal sense, but metaphorically, effectively. Her weaknesses on policy, or that she would turn the country into California, right? Between the open borders and Green New Deals and, no EVs and, no meat and, no straws, even. I mean, she signed up for everything that could be signed up for in California. And so I think the way you kind of, and I think that's anathema to the Midwest. And so the way you do this here is not go after laughs. And then there's a whole foreign policy experience issue. She has just no foreign policy experience whatsoever in a world that is inflamed here through the. So I think there's kind of three pretty good playing fields for Trump. One is just straight policy and performance. The second is California progressive, and what that would mean for the country. And the third is foreign affairs, world of flames. Can you take a risk with how the situation in the world has deteriorated since Trump has become president, and her continuing kind of the pro, let's go comfortable to Iran, foreign policy, which foreign policy doesn't come up much in the polls. And so what is she going to do? She's just going to run I'm going to keep going here, and I represent a fresh look here. I'm bringing bringing in the future, and I'm going to be the first woman president, and you can't vote for Trump because you can't stomach him. Interestingly, on the personal attributes, she won clearly having the right temperament, which I think is mostly a reflection that people don't think Trump has the right temperament. But Trump decisively won a fighter and gets things done. So the flip side of his temperament are those two very strongly positive attributes, and the rest of them were kind of catch as catch can within a couple of points either way.
You mentioned the weird attack both on Vance and now it's also being labeled to Trump. Likability is a very important issue in politics. We saw that front and center in the titanic battle between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton on likability. Is this another version of that? Because, I mean, if you call somebody weird, rarely do you say, oh, I really like him, he's really weird. So is that just another attempt to say, they're just strange and we're not? And but I do think, obviously a lot of people have not liked Harris, especially since she became vice president. So talk a little bit about the likability weirdness factor going on.
Well, most people have thought actually that Harris is a bit weird. That's why she had, the whole laugh, the word salads, look, Bob, you're a member of the mainstream media. We'll be looking at the pages of the Hill, but they're the kind of, this is just somebody cooked up some talking point, in a basement somewhere, and the press got the message, and so they're just, as somebody recounted that they used the word weird on either CNN or MSNBC 150 times. So it's not really based on anything other than somebody decided to issue it, and nobody's seen JD Vance. So it'll be interesting when there's a vice presidential candidate and a vice presidential debate, how he handles himself and what image he creates. But if you kind of look at this whole game of like Obama was so effective at defining Romney that Romney never got off the mat, I think the Democrats here, aided by a media machine, have been very effective at characterizing Vance before he really got himself out there. I think they can't do anything to Trump. I think weird against Trump is kind of like they called him a felon. Weird is kind of a way less than that. I don't think that's going to do anything. And look, it's clear to me she doesn't want to talk about the issues, right? And so if she can get kind of this name calling campaign going, I guess it diverts from the issues. And I think part of Trump's problem is he doesn't particularly like as much to talk about the issues, or he really loves to talk about immigration more than anything else. And I continue to find fascinating that nobody's got a 5-point economic plan in any coherent sense, which is really what people are looking for.
Yeah, it's a good point. We don't know where Harris stands on a lot of issues. I mean, we can look back to her 2020 run, which didn't even make it into 2020. She didn't make it to Iowa. And she, as you mentioned, she told us, her campaign told us over the weekend that she's not for banning fracking, which she was in the past. Her biggest decision, of course, and save the best for last, all the speculation on who she's going to pick. Your polling shows, Shapiro and Kelly are at the top of the list, but it's pretty bunched up. Independents like Kelly. Do you think there's a clear choice here? Do you think it's definitely going to be a white male? And do you think there are any surprises? You really think about it. Harris was not a surprise when Biden picked. When Hillary Clinton picked Kaine, that was not a surprise. I don't expect a surprise. Do you?
No, I don't expect a surprise, and a surprise would be risky. And I don't think that the Democratic campaign wants to do anything risky at the moment. That they've successfully made they did all the risky stuff. They got rid of Biden. They put in Harris, and now they kind of want a little business as usual. And it does, I think when we asked the electorate who they would choose, the truth of the matter is it was just a reflection of what they heard in the media 40% plus didn't have any choice at all. Nobody knows. It's not going to really matter all that much. It's the usual parlor game. I think Shapiro might be a little bit better and also might calm some of the Jewish voters who are, I think, very weary of what Harris might mean for Israel. But most of the scuttlebutt is that it will be Kelly, just as most of the scuttlebutt behind the scenes with Trump was that it was going to be J.D. Vance, and it was.
Yep. Yep. Last question. Anything I missed? Anything closing statements as we head into this crucial stretch? Israel, the war is the same. The economy is the same. For really, the candidate's different, but the issues remain really the same of what we've been talking about for the past year.
Well, that's right. It's a surprisingly stable electorate. As you mentioned, it's still 80% for Israel and 20% for Hamas, and it's still close to 50 for young people and 93.7 among older people in favor of Israel. And there's still 60 to 65% unhappy with the economy. The Biden job rating, hasn't changed. The only change in this poll is that Harris is viewed more favorably than she was, and that the lisping, that the Titanic nature of the Democratic ship that was really headed to the bottom of the sea, got renewed, and we've got a whole new campaign here, and we're going to see the effectiveness really of the two campaigns in communicating fresh messages. I think, if you look at it, it's still 60-40 Trump's election, but that doesn't mean that it's over. In fact, if anything, fundraising on all sides is up, energy on both sides is back up, and this is going to be the hard-fought election we always thought that we're going to have.
It's a whole new race. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of excitement on both sides. Thanks, Mark. Until next month, I can't imagine anything bigger is going to happen over the last month. I don't know about an October surprise. We've seen a couple of those, but interesting polling, and we'll talk to you next month.
Thank you, Bob.